In the vast, untold chronicles of World War II, few narratives are as starkly unexpected or as profoundly transformative
as the journey of German Wehrmacht officers who found themselves trading military discipline for the dusty, demanding life of a Texas cowgirl. By 1944, the United States was host to over 400,000 Axis prisoners of war, a logistical feat often overshadowed by combat narratives. These individuals weren't merely interred. They became a vital, if controversial, labor force, with millions of American men serving overseas. Critical labor shortages plagued industries from agriculture to timber. Nowhere was this more acutely felt than in Texas, the nation's beef capital, where sprawling ranches desperately needed hands. It was into this unique intersection of wartime exigency and cultural paradox that Army Lieutenant Greta Schneider and 32 other German female POWs arrived in July 1944. Transported across the seemingly boundless Texas landscape towards Hereford Camp, their designated labor facility, Greta held a firm conviction. The American West, with its iconic cowboys, was a myth, a Hollywood fabrication. Modern America, she believed, was a testament to urbanity and industrial progress. Yet, as her troop transport rattled down a dirt road, a scene unfolded that shattered her every preconception. An entire procession of mounted riders, herding hundreds of cattle with an unstudied ancient proficiency. This was no movie set. These were real cowboys. This profound cultural clash wasn't merely an observation for Greta. It was the precursor to a personal transformation more radical than any military deployment. She was about to discover that the romanticized frontier was, in fact, a living, breathing reality, and she was about to become an unlikely part of it. Before we delve into the extraordinary details of how this came to be, if you're intrigued by these hidden chapters of history, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing to our channel, and sharing your own most surprising historical discoveries in the comments below. As the bus turned onto a dirt road leading to Hereford Camp, the scene intensified, morphing into what felt like a living Western film set. Vast pastures stretched toward the horizon, dotted with grazing cattle and the occasional windmill drawing water. And everywhere, truly, every wayman on horseback managed livestock with an effortless proficiency that bespoke a lifetime spent in the saddle. "Welcome to Texas, ladies," Sergeant Williams announced in impeccably pronounced German as the bus halted at the camp gates. "You will be assigned to work on nearby ranches as part of the prisoner of war labor program. I trust you appreciate horses, as you will be seeing a great many of them." "Working on a ranch?" Greta queried, grappling with this utterly unforeseen development. Prior to her capture in France, she had served as a supply officer for the German Wehrmacht. Her expertise resided in logistics and administration, not agriculture or animal husbandry. "Texas is in dire need of labor for cattle operations," Williams clarified. "The men who typically perform this work are currently fighting in Europe and the Pacific. German prisoners of war are now filling this critical gap. You will be assigned to local ranches, residing in bunkhouses, and working alongside the cowboys, who will impart the necessary skills." Through the camp fence, Greta observed additional riders, some more clearly seasoned cowboys, while others appeared to be German male POWs in various stages of mastering the work. One prisoner diligently attempted to lasso a fence post under the patient, repetitive demonstration of a weathered American cowboy. "This is preposterous," muttered Corporal Anna Klein, a former military clerk from Berlin. "German soldiers sent to Texas to become cowboys. It sounds like a nightmarish hallucination, not an official POW assignment." However, as they disembarked and were processed into the camp, the reality became undeniable. Hereford Camp had been specifically established to furnish agricultural labor for Texas ranching operations. German POWs, both men and women, were being trained in essential cowboy skills and subsequently deployed to ranches desperate for workers due to wartime labor shortages. "You will receive your ranch assignments tomorrow," Williams informed them during the camp induction briefing. "The individuals you will be working for are authentic Texas ranchers. They anticipate diligent work, but they are equitable people who will treat you respectfully as long as you perform your duties, and they will teach you the cowboy skills passed down through generations." That night, as Greta lay on her cot, the Texas heat permeating the barrack walls, she attempted to reconcile this surreal situation. Captured in France, transported to America, and now on the verge of becoming a cowboy or cowgirl working on a Texas ranch. Alongside individuals she had previously encountered only in Hollywood films. Outside, she could discern the lowing of cattle from a nearby corral and the whinny of horses. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote howled, a sound she had exclusively heard in westerns, but which now served as the authentic backdrop to her impossibly new reality. Real cowboys did exist, and she was about to work with them. Somehow, this had become her life. At dawn, under the hot and bright Texas sky over Hereford Camp, Greta and 11 other German women climbed into a ranch truck, driven by a man who appeared to have stepped directly out of a Western film. He possessed weathered skin, a sun-bleached shirt, a worn cowboy hat, and an expression that strongly suggested he would prefer to be on horseback rather than driving a truckload of prisoners. "I'm Jim Henderson," he announced, in a thick Texas drawl that Greta found challenging to comprehend in English. "You've all been assigned to the Double H Ranch, my family's operation. We manage approximately 2,000 head of cattle across 50,000 acres. Presently, we're short-handed, given that my sons and most of our regular hands are deployed for war. So regardless of your prior experience or confidence, you are going to learn cowboy work." The 40-minute drive to the ranch traversed what appeared to be an endless landscape, rolling plains, scattered mesquite trees, these stand messes, and everywhere, cattle. Greta observed Henderson's profile, attempting to reconcile this authentic cowboy with the romanticized versions she had seen in films. He was unequivocally real, his features etched by actual sun and labor, not the artifice of makeup and stage lights. "Have any of you ever ridden a horse?" Henderson inquired, glancing at the German women in the rearview mirror. "No," Greta admitted, speaking for the group, all of whom shook their heads. "Well, you're going to learn today. One cannot effectively work cattle in Texas without knowing how to ride. Don't worry, we'll start you on gentle horses and instruct you in the proper seat. By late summer, you'll be capable of spending all day in the saddle and even roping a calf if the situation demands it." The ranch house emerged on the horizon, a substantial structure encompassed by corrals, barns, and bunkhouses, clearly signaling a family enterprise spanning generations. Upon their arrival, Greta observed additional cowboys tending to horses, mending fences, and managing cattle with a casual competence acquired only by those who have dedicated their entire lives to the work. "These are the German girls," an older cowboy inquired, eyeing them with frank curiosity. "They appear somewhat unsuited for ranch work. They'll toughen up," Henderson replied confidently. "Germans generally prove to be diligent workers once they comprehend their tasks. I had 2 German boys last year who were shaping up to be competent hands by the time they were Greta and the other women were assigned to a Spartan but clean bunkhouse. It featured wooden bunk beds, basic furnishings, and a window overlooking the main corral where horses awaited. While the accommodations were roughly equivalent to their experience at Hereford Camp, the context was entirely different. They were no longer within a POW camp. They were residing on a working ranch. "The first lesson commences in 30 minutes, Henderson announced. "Change into your work clothes. We've provided you with jeans, boots, and hats, sized to fit. You cannot herd cattle in German uniforms." The transformation from German Wehrmacht officer to Texas ranch hand began with the donning of American cowboy attire. Greta surveyed herself in a small mirror. Jeans, a stark contrast after years of military skirts. Heavy but practical boots, and a cowboy hat that shaded her from the scorching Texas sun. She initially felt ridiculous, akin to a child playing dress-up. However, as she stepped outside and saw the other German women similarly attired, observing them preparing for the day's work alongside authentic cowboys, the sense of absurdity receded. It was replaced by a feeling akin to adventure. They were about to acquire skills that define the American West, taught by individuals who embodied a living tradition passed down through generations. "All right, ladies," Henderson called from the fence line. "Come meet your horses. I define gentle animals that will instruct you in riding. Respect them, and they will take care of you." Greta approached the horse Henderson indicated, a friendly sorrel mare that nudged her hand, seemingly seeking a treat. The animal was massive and powerful, embodying a skill Greta had never imagined she would require. However, If she were to successfully undertake ranch work in Texas, she would need to master this ancient partnership between human and horse, honed over lifetimes in the saddle by cowboys. By mid-morning, Greta understood the rationale behind cowboys' physical robustness. Learning to ride proved to be no gentle introduction. It was an immediate immersion into a skill demanding strength, balance, and courage she had never required as a supply officer. The horse beneath her moved with a power that was simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying. "Relax your hips," instructed Maria. A seasoned cowgirl Henderson had assigned to train the German women. "The horse is attuned to your tension. You must move in harmony with the animal, not in opposition to it. Cowboys do not master horses with brute force. They collaborate with them." Greta attempted to comply, but every instinct urged her to grip tightly, to maintain rigid control. To relax atop 1,200 pounds of moving muscle seemed entirely counterintuitive. "You're overthinking it," Maria observed, riding her own horse with the effortless grace of someone who had been in the saddle since childhood, seamlessly pacing alongside Greta. Cease being a German officer attempting to control everything. Begin to embody a cowgirl who trusts her horse. This advice was both practical and profoundly symbolic. Greta's extensive military training had emphasized control, precision, and strict adherence to procedure. Cowboy work, however, demonstrably demanded a distinct approach, fluidity, adaptability, and a reliance on partnership over domination. After 2 hours of riding practice, Henderson called for a break, gathering the women by the corral where experienced cowboys were working cattle. "Observe their movements," instructed. "Note how the horse and rider operate as a single koi sabe unit. That is the objective." While most individuals require years to reach that level of mastery, with dedicated effort, you can learn the basics in a few months. The demonstration proved mesmerizing. Cowboys separated individual cattle from the herd with fluid, precise movements that appeared effortless, but unequivocally represented decades of practice. Horses responded to subtle cue shifts in weight, leg pressure, minimal rein contact, creating a seamless communication between rider and mount. "Your German army might emphasize strict obedience and control," Maria commented, observing Greta's mesmerized expression. "The cowboy approach is fundamentally different. We train horses through cooperation, not domination. The same principle applies to cattle. You guide them where you desire them to go, by understanding their inherent nature, not by forcing them against their instincts." "That seems inefficient," Greta observed thoughtfully. "Isn't direct control inherently more effective?" "Try it," Maria suggested with a knowing smile. "Spend a day attempting to force a horse to comply with your will, and a day collaborating with one, and you will quickly discern which method is more effective." The afternoon commenced with practical application, moving a herd of cattle from one pasture to another under the supervision of experienced cowboys. Greta found herself genuinely riding alongside cattle, her horse responding to her tentative cues, her body gradually comprehending the rhythm of movement essential for riding. "You're doing well," Maria called encouragingly. "Observe how your horse instinctively understands its role. You merely need to suggest direction, then trust it to manage the specifics." Cowboys and their horses function as a team, not as a commander and a subordinate. By evening, Greta's entire body ached from hours in the saddle, yet she had successfully assisted in moving 200 head of cattle to fresh grazing land. The accomplishment felt more tangible than any administrative task she had performed in the Wehrmacht concrete, physical, and connecting her to the land and animals in a way she had never experienced. "Not a bad first day," Henderson admitted during dinner at the ranch house, where the German post dined alongside the American cowboys. "You ladies possess significant grit. I anticipated some of you would quit by noon, but you all persevered. That encapsulates the essence of ranch work, enduring discomfort through resilience. How soon will we actually become proficient?" Greta inquired. "You'll be performing actual work within 2 weeks," Henderson replied. "Not as expert cowboys, but certainly competent enough for routine operations. We are desperate for labor, so whatever skill level you can achieve, we will utilize it." That night, Greta documented in her diary, "Today I became a cowboy, or at least I made a genuine attempt. The situation is utterly absurd. German Wehrmacht officers learning to ride horses and manage cattle in Texas, under the tutelage of authentic American cowboys. Yet, it is also surprisingly satisfying. Ranch work is arduous, but honest. It involves no politics, no ideology, merely the application of practical skills to tangible problems. After years of military bureaucracy, work where success is measured by cattle moved and fences mended, rather than forms filled and orders executed, feels refreshingly authentic. 3 weeks into her ranch work, Greta was capably riding a horse, moderately skilled with a lasso, and demonstrating a fundamental understanding of herd management. The transformation from Wehrmacht officer to working cowgirl was nearing completion, and she was developing a genuine respect for skills she had initially considered primitive when compared to modern. German efficiency. You've adapted to it quite naturally, Maria observed during a cattle drive to summer pastures. I had assumed German military types would be too rigid for cowboy work, but you've shown remarkable adaptability. It required relinquishing some entrenched assumptions, Greta admitted, guiding her horse around a stubborn cow. I had believed modern America had moved beyond cowboys and ranch life, considering Western movies as mere nostalgic fantasies. Discovering that this way of life is authentic and demands genuine skill has been profoundly educational. Many people make that mistake, Maria replied. They presume that with the advent of cities and factories, rural life must have vanished. However, ranching remains fundamental to the Texas economy and culture. Cowboys are not museum exhibits. We are working professionals, maintaining traditions because they are effective, not merely because they are quaint. This observation resonated deeply with Greta. She had previously assumed German military efficiency to be superior to American methodologies, believing that German order and precision would naturally overcome American informality. However, the cowboy approach, flexible, adaptable, and predicated on cooperation rather than control, was proving remarkably effective in contexts she had never previously considered. How did your family acquire cowboy skills? Greta inquired during a water break. My great-grandfather immigrated to Texas in the 1870s. Maria explained he acquired his skills from the vaqueros, the Mexican cowboys who had been working cattle here for generations. He then transmitted those skills to his children, who in turn passed them to theirs. I learned from my father, as did my brothers. It is a living tradition, not a historical reenactment. The concept of generational knowledge transfer through practical apprenticeship, rather than formal institutional training, was entirely alien to Greta's German military experience. Nevertheless, she could clearly perceive its effectiveness. Cowboys learn by doing, under expert supervision, building skills through repetition and correction rather than solely through classroom instruction. What will transpire after the war? Greta inquired. When your sons and regular ranch hands return home, what will become of us? Maria's expression grew thoughtful. That will largely depend on individual ranchers. If prisoners prove to be proficient workers, some might extend offers of immigration sponsorship. Ranch labor consistently remains scarce. A capable hand is valuable, irrespective of their birthplace. The prospect of remaining in America, working on a Texas ranch as a cowgirl, seemed utterly outlandish to Greta. Yet she had already learned that previously inconceivable circumstances could become tangible realities. Cowboys genuinely existed. Ranching was a contemporary profession, and German POWs could indeed acquire skills that connected them to the heritage of the American West. Over the next several months, Greta's competence rapidly grew. She learned to rope cattle efficiently, navigate a horse confidently, mend fences, manage grazing rotations, and master the hundreds of other skills essential for a cowboy. The physical labor strengthened her body, and the intrinsic satisfaction of the work was something she had never encountered during her Wehrmacht service. You've become a truly capable hand, Henderson told her during the fall cattle roundup. Would you consider remaining after the war? We will require workers, and you've unequivocally proven your ability to perform the job. I would be willing to sponsor your immigration if you wish to stay in Texas. Greta stared at the rancher, absorbing an offer she had never anticipated. To remain in America, to work on a Texas ranch, as a cowgirl, to forsake Germany and live a life of cattle drives beneath an endless sky. I will require time to consider. She responded carefully. Take all the time you require, Henderson said. The war will inevitably conclude. When it does, you'll have to decide whether to return to a bombed-out Germany or forge a new life in Texas. It is a choice many prisoners are confronting. I merely wished you to know that the option exists, contingent on your proving yourself worthy, and you have. That night, Greta sat on the bunkhouse porch, observing the sunset paint the Texas sky in hues of oranges and purples she had never witnessed in Germany. Around her, cattle settled for the night. Horses whinnied in the corral. In the distance, a cowboy sung an authentic cowboy song, not a Hollywood performance. This could genuinely be her life. Not a fantasy, not a temporary wartime experience, but a tangible future. Working on a Texas ranch, upholding traditions that inextricably linked the present to the frontier past. The possibility was both terrifying and incredibly appealing, a sentiment she found challenging to articulate. By December 1944, as the weather grew colder, news arrived of Germany's desperate Ardennes offensive, the Battle of the Bulge final, last-ditch attempt to reverse the inevitable course of the war. For Greta, this news felt distant and almost irrelevant, overshadowed by the immediate realities of ranch work and the unexpected community she had discovered among the Texas cowboys. Your country is enduring considerable hardship, an American cowboy commented during a lunch break. The war might conclude by spring. Have you considered your actions then? Since Henderson's offer, Greta had contemplated little else. Returning to Germany entailed facing bombed-out cities, economic devastation, and a society that would likely judge her harshly for surviving captivity. Remaining in Texas meant forsaking her homeland, pursuing a life she had never imagined in an erstwhile enemy country, and performing work she had never conceived. I am seriously considering remaining, she confessed to Lysel during an evening discussion. Henderson offered to sponsor my immigration if I continue as a ranch worker after the war. It is an extremely tempting proposition. I have received a similar offer, Lysel revealed. The Martins family ranch, where I am assigned, stated they would sponsor me and 2 other German women if we prove competent at the work. We are seriously considering it. Similar conversations unfolded throughout the bunkhouses. Among the 12 German women assigned to the Double H ranch, 8 were contemplating remaining in America. The cowboy way of life, arduous but honest, physically demanding yet intrinsically satisfying, connected to the land and animals in a primal way hut, captivated them. We arrived here as prisoners, believing cowboys were merely Hollywood fantasies, Greta mused. We discovered them to be genuine professionals, maintaining traditions passed down through generations. And somehow, we became an integral part of this heritage. To abandon that simply because the war is concluding feels wrong. However, choosing to stay meant accepting that the Germany to which they had sworn allegiance was no more. The Wehrmacht oath had been pledged to a regime that had failed disastrously, and personal well-being might legitimately outweigh national loyalty. It is not betrayal, Maria countered when Greta voiced these doubts. It is the recognition that home transcends a mere geographic location. It is where you truly belong, where you can construct a meaningful life. If ranch life in Texas offers you that, selecting it over returning to ruin is not abandonment. It is an act of survival and growth. As winter deepened, Greta worked alongside the cowboys preparing for calving season, acquiring obstetric skills she never imagined. The work was intimate and challenging, involving assistance to cows through difficult births, tending to newborn calves, and managing the new generation of cattle that would sustain the ranch's operations. Cowboys are fundamentally caretakers, Henderson explained during a difficult birth. We manage the life cycle, tend to the animals, and work in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Modern society often overlooks that someone must consistently perform this work to feed the populace. Cowboys are not merely romantic frontier figures. We are agricultural professionals who ensure the continuity of the food supply. This perspective significantly helped Greta understand why ranching remained economically vital, rather than merely a historical curiosity. America's industrial strength was built upon an agricultural foundation that cowboys diligently helped maintain. Their work was unequivocally modern and essential, not a nostalgic throwback. In March 1945, as Germany's collapse accelerated, Greta finalized her decision. She would accept Henderson's offer, apply for immigration sponsorship, and remain in Texas, working as a professional cowgirl on a ranch that had, for her, become more of a home than Germany ever was. "Are you certain?" Liesel inquired when Greta announced her choice. "As certain as I can be about anything after years of war and captivity." Greta responded, "The Germany I served no longer exists. My family, whom I left behind, likely did not survive the bombings and subsequent chaos. The Wehrmacht that trained me led a nation to catastrophe. What precisely is pulling me back? An obligation to a failed ideology. That seems considerably less compelling than building a future doing work I have learned to respect." Several other prisoners made similar choices. By the time preparations for repatriation began that summer, 8 of the 12 women from the Double H Ranch had formally applied for immigration sponsorship, choosing Texas ranch life over returning to a defeated Germany. "You've all become exceptionally capable hands," Henderson told them. "You are welcome to remain as long as you desire." The cowboy tradition has historically absorbed individuals from all over the world who are willing to learn and work diligently. You've demonstrated both. That now makes you Texans, irrespective of your birthplace. As Greta prepared for her transition from prisoner of war to immigrant, from Wehrmacht officer to professional cowgirl, she reflected on how thoroughly her perceptions had been overturned. Cowboys were not merely Hollywood fantasies. They were real, skilled, indispensable workers, maintaining traditions that inextricably linked past to present. And somehow, a German officer had become one of them. By August 1945, with the war concluded, the immigration process for German posts opting to remain in the U.S. accelerated. Greta's application for permanent residency efficiently navigated the bureaucratic channels, and she continued her ranch work, now officially a paid employee rather than a prisoner laborer. "Your immigration papers have been approved," Henderson told her one morning. "You're officially a legal resident now, free to work, travel, and eventually apply for citizenship. If you choose, congratulations, you're a Texan." The shift felt surreal, yet simultaneously entirely natural. In 14 months, ranch work had more thoroughly defined her identity than her Wehrmacht service ever had. She now thought in terms of cattle cycles, grazing rotations, and weather patterns, rather than military logistics and supply chains. "How do you feel about your decision?" Maria inquired during a cattle drive to winter pastures. "Profoundly grateful," Greta answered honestly. "I anticipated spending wartime in a POW camp, then returning to a ruined Germany. Instead, I acquired cowboy skills, found work I excelled at, and discovered a home in Texas. It could have been far worse." However, assimilation was not without its inherent challenges. Some local Texans resented German immigrants occupying ranch jobs, questioning whether former enemies should be so readily embraced. Others, however, appreciated the solution to the labor shortage and judged individuals based on their competence rather than their nationality. "Mrs. Henderson does not approve of having German women on the ranch," Greta overheard one cowboy mention. "She contends it is not right for us to hire individuals from the country that killed American boys." The resentment was understandable, yet profoundly painful. Greta had not desired the war, had not chosen to serve in the Wehrmacht, and had personally committed no act to harm Americans. Yet she bore the burden of Germany's collective actions, a weight that would undeniably remain with her for years. "Some individuals will always judge you because you are German," Henderson admitted when she mentioned the overheard comment. "You cannot alter that fact. What you can do is demonstrate through your work and your character that you are more than your nationality. Most rational people will judge you for who you are, not for where you were born." By the close of 1945, Greta had fully transitioned from prisoner of war to immigrant cowgirl. She had learned to rope with precision, could ride from dawn to dusk without complaint, and understood cattle management with the same proficiency as cowboys who had done it since childhood. These skills connected her to Texas traditions and also provided substantial economic value. "I never thought I'd see the day," Maria commented, observing Greta expertly separate a calf from the herd. A German Wehrmacht officer turned Texas cowgirl. "Yet, you performed the work as proficiently as anyone out here." It was the highest compliment Greta could imagine, to be accepted as a competent professional by people who truly embodied the American West. In 1950, 5 years after the war's conclusion, Greta Henderson, who had married Jim Henderson's youngest son, John, in 1948, stood in the Double H Ranch barn, instructing a group of young Texans, including Henderson's granddaughter, in the nuances of roping. Her German accent had soft, but remained discernible, a subtle mark of her immigrant status. Yet her exceptional cowboy skills unequivocally proclaimed her belonging. "You must anticipate where the calf will run," she instructed, demonstrating the technique with practiced ease. Cowboys do not merely react. They meticulously read the animal's behavior and position themselves accordingly. It is a profound collaboration between human intuition and livestock instinct. The students watched with a reverence that would have been inconceivable 5 years prior. Greta had become one of the most highly respected cattle handlers in the region. Her expertise transcended her German origins through the sheer demonstration of her exceptional ability. "Miss Greta," inquired Sarah, Henderson's granddaughter, "did you truly learn all this as a prisoner of war? You had never ridden a horse before you came to Texas." "Absolutely true," Greta confirmed. "I was a Wehrmacht supply officer, a profession far removed from that of a cowgirl. However, Texas ranchers needed labor, German prisoners needed work, and somehow we discovered common ground in the cowboy tradition." The transformation was extraordinary, not only for Greta, but also for the broader Texas ranching community. Dozens of German posts remained after the war, becoming permanent residents who enriched the local culture while simultaneously upholding the traditions that defined Texas identity. "Do you ever regret remaining?" the student inquired. It was a question she was frequently asked. "Never," Greta answered, without hesitation. "The Germany I left no longer existed. Texas provided me with meaningful work, a community that accepted me despite my origins, and a life connected to the land and animals that I never imagined I would desire. This is unequivocally my home now." After the lesson, Henderson walked alongside her to the fence line, both observing the cattle graze in the quiet afternoon sun. "You've become a tremendous asset to Texas ranching," he observed, "not merely a capable hand, but a teacher transmitting traditions to the next generation. That encapsulates the essence of cowboy culture. Skills passed down through consistent practice and apprenticeship. I am profoundly grateful you afforded me the opportunity," Greta said. "Few would offer immigration sponsorship to a prisoner of war from an enemy nation. Your willingness to judge me by my work, rather than my nationality, irrevocably changed my life." "You earned it," Henderson simply replied. "Cowboys have historically originated from all corners. Native Americans, Mexicans, freed slaves, immigrants from every continent. What truly matters is whether you can perform the job and respect the traditions. You demonstrated both." As evening fell, Greta reflected on the unlikely journey from German Wehrmacht officer to Texas cowgirl. She had discovered that cowboys were not merely Hollywood fantasies, but a vibrant, living tradition, that adversarial captives could evolve into mentors and friends, and that home could be established in unexpected places, fostered by honest work and mutual respect. In the summer of 1960, 15 years after the war's conclusion, Greta Henderson, who had married Jim Henderson's youngest son, John, in 1948, stood on the porch of her own small ranch house. Observing her children, half German and half Texan, practice the roping skills she had imparted to them. The assimilation was complete. The German prisoner of war had fully integrated, becoming a Texas rancher, mother, and respected community member, indistinguishable from her neighbors save for a subtle accent she had never entirely lost. "Mama, look," her daughter, Emma, called out, having successfully roped the practice dummy on her initial attempt. "Excellent form," Greta praised. Your OPA would be proud. Jim Henderson had passed away 2 years prior, leaving the Double H Ranch to his sons, but also leaving a powerful legacy of accepting German posts as valuable workers and prospective Americans. His remarkable ability to see beyond nationality had transformed the lives of dozens, including Greta's. "Do you still think about Germany?" Joan inquired, joining her on the porch after completing his own work. "Sometimes," Greta admitted. "I often wonder what became of the family I left behind, whether any survived the war and its aftermath. But I never regret remaining. Texas provided me with a life Germany never could. meaningful work, a loving family, and a community that judged me by my character, rather than my country of origin. That evening, the local Ranchers Association held its annual gathering, and Greta attended as a respected member, no longer merely a curious immigrant. Her expertise in cattle management was highly sought after. Her opinions on ranching matters carried significant weight, and her German background had subtly faded into an interesting life story, rather than remaining a defining characteristic. Mrs. Henderson, a young journalist covering the ranchers' meeting, inquired, "You are one of several former German prisoners of war who remained in Texas after the war. What do you hope people understand about that experience?" Greta considered her answer carefully. "I hope they recognize that cowboys are authentic, not Hollywood fantasies. That the American West is not merely history, but a vibrant, living tradition maintained by working professionals. And that this country's greatest strength resides in its ability to absorb individuals from all over the world who are willing to work diligently and respect the culture they join. Do you consider yourself German or American?" A Texan, Greta replied, with a smile, "Which is a unique category that encompasses both my German heritage and my American citizenship. Cowboys have historically originated from all corners. I'm simply another immigrant who learned the skills and became an integral part of this tradition." After the gathering, Greta drove home under the vast Texas sky, reflecting on the 15-year transformation. The German Wehrmacht officer who had once believed cowboys were Hollywood fictions was now a seasoned rancher, instructing the next generation in the skills that define Texas' identity. The prisoner of war who had been shocked to witness real cowboys on horseback had become one herself, a living testament to the idea that the most important American traditions were those flexible enough to absorb newcomers. Real cowboys. She had uttered that first day, incredulous, observing the riders manage cattle across the Texas plains. Now she was one of them, connected to a tradition spanning generations, maintaining skills that, though modernized, remained essential, and passing that knowledge to the children who would carry cowboy culture into the future. Her journey from skeptical prisoner to respected rancher, improbable as it seemed, reflected the deepest truth of Texas. Cowboys were not museum exhibits, nor Hollywood fantasies. They were living professionals who maintained tradition by welcoming anyone willing to learn and work diligently, regardless of their origin or the uniform they had once worn.